Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. We're back on the 2.29 dev server, and there's been a few more additions to the Italian tech tree. It looks like Hungary is spreading like a wildfire, so instead of just being fully into ground, it is now being put into the helicopter part. And I think the basic reason is because it's pretty easy to just copy-paste some vehicles from the Soviet tech tree, stick it in the Italian tech tree, and so it gives people stuff to play until they get the other helicopters ready for Italy, or maybe just to kind of help them out in their lineups that they have. So what we have is three new vehicles for Italy. We have the Mi-24D, the Mi-24V, and then also the Mi-24P. All of these are same BRs as the vehicles that already exist in the Italian tech tree, so you can either swap them out or swap others in, or just try different ways. I suppose in Heli, not Heli CBT, but you know what I mean, Heli PvE, and just kind of have fun with the different sets of weapons. It's always nice to have more choices, especially when creating lineups. The Mi-24D is the first Mi-24, and the major difference that I've always seen between the D and also the V is the fact that this one gets access to Sturm missiles and the D gets access to Phalangas. So the Phalanga missile is not a bad one. The major issue with it is the firing range of the missiles, only 4 kilometers, and the maximum speed being 230, but it has good pen, and if it gets the target, it'll hammer it. When you have a look at the V, and of course it's Sturms, the Sturms have a firing range of 5 kilometers. They are slightly lower on penetration, but still well enough. But one of the big things is the maximum speed is so much higher compared to what is there previously. The Mi-24V also gets access to a bunch of air-to-air ordnance, so it can keep itself alive when dealing with different duels in the air. The R60MKs, obviously being the all-aspect export version of the R60M, which will give this thing a decent chance of survival at the end of the day. You can bring along a pretty fun preset with some Sturms and then also some air-to-airs, and on top of it some extra guns, which are quite nice. But the vehicles themselves are pretty similar. Like you can tell that they come from the same crop, and the major difference between these and the Soviet ones are of course the camouflages, and also what lineups you can run them with, which is super important. You can see here the good old little thing that's popping up, the IRCM. Then you have this one. This is the camouflage for this vehicle, and overall pretty nice to see it. I think it generally looks good. And then if you have a look at the Mi-24P, it actually gets this interesting grey camo, which makes it look like a slightly different vehicle. The Mi-24P gets the IRCM, it gets the R60Ms, not the MKs, surprisingly, and then it also gets the Sturms. So functionally, in-game, it's going to play very similarly to the standard tech tree Mi-24V. This also solves a issue that Italy has had for the longest time with their premiums, the premium helicopters being removed. They did have a Mangusta, I believe, like an International, which was their premium heli. Then that got removed. Then they brought in the T129 for like 3 seconds for, about a month. Then that got removed. And now you have the Mi-24P. So here's hoping that this vehicle lasts longer than a month, because then it will make a record over the last few years for the tech tree. So these vehicles have a lot of bells and whistles, obviously with the flares and the IRCM, the V having the HIRSS as well on top of it, with the flares chaff and the IRCM. So this basically shields the exhaust, so it's harder for IR missiles to get a lock on it, which can be very annoying. You also have the MVDs if you want to use them, but it's not as if that's going to make a huge difference. One of the things that these vehicles do actually benefit from, which is super cool, is something that happened more recently, which went under everybody's noses. Usually they do these updates to be able to, move stuff to different places. Unfortunately, there's a bug with the test flight for helicopters right now. So what is actually here is, not the test drive. There's no planes flying around. There's no AI on the ground or anything. It's just a free bird, free look. So on top of everything that the Mi-24 gets, the missiles, and then of course you know, the optics and the countermeasures, which, you know, generally look pretty cool out of it. The countermeasures are actually in different areas, so yeah, it's pretty cool though. The one thing that it also gets was the updated cockpit. This cockpit looks really nice. It's one of those which they've changed quite a lot since its placeholder, and everything is fully there. It's all fully functional, and it just looks fantastic. It's really, really nice. I don't know how else to put it at this point. I just really wish that other vehicles would have this level of cockpit, and I'm sure they will over time. It just obviously takes a little bit. You even have this here, which is pretty cool. So yeah, that's something that they've also added to these things. Then, of course, the R60s, which is nice. There's a few other kind of munitions that these vehicles can get to try and make them a little bit more useful, I suppose. If for specific scenarios I feel like you're never going to use. You have bombs, you got rockets. The rockets, the S8KOs, do actually make sense to use, but stuff like the S24s, I mean, maybe, but not really. But the bombs are kind of useless, unfortunately. That's one thing when I look at these. Maybe they'll be good for rushing, like heli rushing at the start of battles, because especially the Mi-24D gets a ton of S5Ks. So you can bring along 128 of these things, and also one thing that the Mi-24s have is they have CCIP, not just for the turret, not just for the cannons, but also the rockets and the bombs. So you can hit from afar and be able to just annihilate a lot of stuff. They do also have a 12.7 in the front of it, so at least you have something, even if you've lost the rest of it. You got the Klimov TV3 117Vs on the D, and then I believe they're the same on the V. Yep, they're probably the same on the P as well. You got the transmission, the fuel tanks, and of course the guns, which are for some reason modeled, even though they're a additional suspended weaponry armament. So what you're getting in the Italian heli tree is 3 Hungarian helicopters. I don't really see a negative to this. I saw a few people talking about the fact that since they've added these, Italian helis are going to take less precedent, or, you know, they're not going to be working on Italian helicopters going forward, or, you know, this will mean that, you know, not a lot of people will try and play the Italian helicopters. Well, unfortunately, it's newsflash time. There was a lot of people that weren't playing Italian helicopters anyway, the vast majority of the community. There was not a lot of interest for them. And also, the idea of putting in these helicopters, which literally all you have to do is create a camouflage for them, because they're just copy and pasted from something else. The fact that these would be in any way taking development time away from Italian helicopters or anything like that is completely ridiculous when you think about it. With the amount of effort that goes into creating stuff like this, or a completely unique helicopter, which is, you know, all by itself. So yeah, there's 2 different strings of thinking, which can be tough sometimes, but it is how it is. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.